All right, we're all set.
Okay, welcome to the Town of Colonie Planning Board meeting, Tuesday, January 19th, 6:00 p.m. The meeting is called to order. Sean, can you call the roll?
Sure thing. All right, Stephen Hyder.
Here.
Lou Mayan.
Here.
Paul Rosano.
Here.
Chip Ashworth.
Here.
Craig Shamlian.
Here.
Peter Studo.
Here.
And Kathy Marinelli is here as counsel. Susan Milstein is absent.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the report of the Planning and Economic Development Director. And can you tell us what our COVID status is part of your report?
Yep, so we are still meeting remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't have an end date in sight. I think if I did, it would be worth a lot of money to a lot of folks right now. So, but we'll continue to meet in this remote format here using Zoom. I think, Luigi's been part of this before, who's one of our applicants, but anybody who's new to this tonight, what we do is the board members, the applicant, and anybody providing public comment appears in our Zoom meeting room with us. The meeting is also being simulcasted to YouTube for those that just want to observe. All those records are then merged over to our town meeting portal after the fact. And so we'll continue to do that. We just ask that if you're not a member of the board or the public, that you just wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. If anything gets too far out of control, I will take control of mute functions and regain control of the meeting for the chair, but that'll be at your direction.
Okay. Are you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set. Nothing new to report in the department right now. We're just still working on there's two different teams in the office, and I think the board is aware of that. You find half of us in one day, half of us in the other, and the other days we're all still working from home.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is our regular business. We have two action items. The first item is 2101, 2103, and 2105 Central Avenue, office, warehouse, and self-storage. Sketch plan review for the construction of a 6,000 square foot office, warehouse, and 3 self-storage buildings totaling 6,150 square feet. The site zone is COR, which is commercial, office, residential. And I'll turn it over to Sean in the department if you have any introductory comments.
Actually, Zach's running this project as our planner on staff. Zach, do you want to talk through this? Yeah,
I can start it off. Project went back to DC.
Oh, and can we put the site plan up too, by the way?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get that up.
Just to start it off, the project went to DCC back in December, and all town departments and the TD were present. Just real quick, because it's 3 properties, what will need to be done is a lot merger to create one parcel. So that will probably be done during the concept review if we get to that step. There's 2 waivers that are going to be required currently. The building exceeds the major setback off Central Avenue, which is 25 feet. So there's a waiver for that. And parking within the front yard is also requiring a waiver. The project's located in the floodplain, so it will be one thing that our department and the TD will have to determine if it needs to go to the Floodplain Management Appeals Board. And just during the meeting, during the DCC meeting, just a couple things that came up were the special use permits that were going to be required for the self-storage units in the warehouse. And that's going to go through the zoning board. And the drawing now shows the dumpster enclosure, which it didn't at DCC. And the dumpster enclosure is too close to the side yard. So that's going to be another variance unless it gets moved. So that's about it. I'll let Luigi go ahead and present if he needs to.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So good evening, Luigi Palesci with ABD Engineers. Also on the line with me is Matt Ward. He's with MRW Equipment Leasing. That's the name of the ownership of the property that he has this under contract. But he also owns a business called Trenchless Today. This 6,000 square foot building that he's proposing to build is for that business, Trenchless Today. They do underground pipe lining. We are setting that up for 2 tenant buildings. He would take half and the other we're not sure of, but setting it up for a possible other tenant. So to back up a little bit, as Zach had mentioned, this property does consist of 3 properties, 2101, 2103, and 2105 Central Ave. and they will be merged as part of the project. There are 3 existing curb cuts that are out there today. One of the curb cuts serves an existing commercial building / residential building on the site that would be removed to make way for this proposed 6,000 square foot building. The 3 curb cuts would be modified to 2 curb cuts as shown on the site plan. We do require a full access curb cut, of course. And what we'd like to do is utilize the one exit on the north side as an exit only. We just feel that circulation would be better having that, and being that the existing curb cut is there already, and being an exit only, we feel that it would just help with traffic management on the site. So with the 6,000 square foot building, the front facade would face Route 5 Central Ave. It would have the office building look, and then we have just at-grade doors proposed in the rear. And those doors are so that trenchless today can store their materials that they use for their trenchless today underground piping operation. So, you know, inside the warehouse of that building is all the materials that the business needs to run on a daily basis, which would include the felt liners, the equipments, cameras, things like that to run that business. We are setting up in the rear of the building, you know, enough pavement so that he can get his trucks and maneuver in and out. We are proposing approximately 13 spaces because as part of this business, he does have vans that will go out for company vehicles. So those company vehicles will be stored in the back along those 13 parking spaces. So utilizing the entire property, the applicant would also like to incorporate storage. That storage would be used for both his business and the normal consumer. Anybody with, you know, like you see out with self-storage facilities, any home goods that are needed for certain customers to store their home goods or products that they need to store until they're ready to use it or sell it. So that consists of a couple buildings. We do have circulation around the back portion of the building, which would meet, you know, fire access, emergency access around the site there. As far as the dumpster goes, we did propose a dumpster. We can certainly relocate it and move it further away. We wouldn't be looking for a variance for the dumpster. So, you know, we can certainly, you know, relocate that to further away from the property line. As far as the utilities go, there is a sewer line that runs through the property along the frontage. We will connect to that. In talking with DCC and Pure Waters, we've added some grease tanks and a sampling manhole with our lateral as their recommendation for the site. So that we have the availability to connect to the sanitary sewer system, and as well as the public water system. Water, fortunately, is on our side as well. So the connections for both sewer and water should be easy enough because they're on our side of the road. We don't have to directional bore to the opposite side. So we've got both availability for water and sewer. And then for stormwater, the whole site drains away from Central Ave. There is the Lyshakill Creek at the very back of the property. That Lyshakill Creek, we're aware there's a 100-foot buffer area. We're not planning to encroach within that 100-foot buffer, but there is an area where we can accommodate a stormwater management area. We know there's sand in the area, so we're hoping for infiltration. We still have to do our test pits, but we figured that we would get some feedback from a sketch plan level and hope to advance and do all, you know, further details and due diligence that we would need to do when we come back for concept. So, you know, the stormwater management would certainly meet the DEC stormwater regulations because a SWIP would be required for this project. We do plan to disturb approximately 1.5 acres. So we'd be over the 1 acre threshold and we would need to comply with the SWIP and New York State DEC requirements. Green space we're good on. We have plenty of green space there. For this type of use, self-storage and the 6,000 square foot building won't require a lot of trip generations. You're looking at 10 to 20 trips and in the peak hour, and mainly that's because of the employees when they get there early in the morning. You know, they'll swap vehicles and go out to work and then come back and you know, leave the company vehicle behind and off they go back home. So not too many trips. And then, as Zach had mentioned, there are a couple of waivers that we would like to discuss tonight. The buildings exceed 25 foot for the major setback from Central Avenue. And if you look up and down the corridor on Central Ave, a lot of the buildings are set back. So, you know, we felt that by positioning the building further back would be, you know, similar to the surrounding neighborhood. And then by having the building further back, it allows us to put the parking along the front. You know, when you have an office business, you know, you tend to, you know, as you drive by, you want to see the office storefront space, and, you know, the customers, depending on the second tenant, we don't know what that second tenant would be, but for the office side of this trenchless technologies, you know, it's not very customer based where you're going to have a lot of customers showing up at the facility. So we don't need a lot of parking in the front, and we felt that, you know, by setting the building back and having some parking in the front would give a good street presence and make it look similar to what you see up and down Central Ave today. And, you know, as an example, you see Leah Toyota, they have a ton of cars up against Central Ave, and here we're only proposing 10 parking spaces, you know, plus or minus. So so we would like to discuss the waiver for setting this building a little further back. And then the other waiver would be, you know, as I mentioned, the parking in the front yard. However, you know, we would propose some sort of fencing along the right of way, you know, to give as much of that 80% frontage that the town is always looking for, that's stated in the zoning. But having the two curb cuts, you know, we can only achieve roughly 56% of continuous street frontage with some sort of fence or decorative fencing that we would be willing to propose. And I guess another reason too to keep the building set further back is because of the sewer system and the easement. You know, if we were to be up against the front setback line, you know, we would be encroaching or be very close to the sewer easement. So, you know, we're hoping that, you know, the planning board is in favor of keeping the building back, and, you know, we can certainly work out some more details on the landscaping and the decorative fencing and so forth. But I think that's all I have to say for now. I'd like to turn it over to you guys and, you know, get your feedback for sketch level.
Okay, this project's being reviewed by our town designated engineer for the planning board, Barton and LaJudas, and I think we have Chuck Voss here. Chuck, I know you haven't done a complete review, but could you give us your preliminary thoughts?
Sure, Peter. We were at the DCC meeting back in December where this project was first brought in before the town, and you know, it's relatively straightforward, as Luigi said. Excuse me. Basically, all the utilities are either on site or in close proximity to the site. That includes sewer, water, you know, power, infrastructure. The general layout does not seem to be inconsistent with some of the other projects the board has seen out there. And certainly, as Luigi described, the one front setback waiver, it seems to make sense given certainly the location of the sewer easement. Craig very frequently does not like to see, you know, new buildings or even older buildings right up close to their easements. They've got to be able to get in there and do work and things if they have to. So, you know, certainly that one waiver seems relatively reasonable. The only other really issues that, you know, we would want to pay attention to as the project evolves, as Luigi mentioned, is the stormwater at this point. The Lyshkill Creek, as Luigi mentioned, is situated just to the north of this project, and certainly it's a sensitive area. The project's also in the Niskayuna sole source aquifer zone, so we want to make sure that there's a sensitivity there, separation of groundwater, and all with the sewer system or the septic system. Again, the flood zone is another potential concern, but I'm sure they can potentially overcome that. So really, it looks like, part of the site's a redevelopment site. The other part has some trees on it that, maybe at one time in the past had some sort of home on it or something, but certainly not in recent times. So the only other issue that we saw was just, maybe a potential concern with the 2 curb cuts. I would ask the applicants to really try and justify the need for that western curb cut. We looked at adjacency to the commercial properties to the west. We looked for opportunities for interconnect there, and really there aren't any. As the board knows, if you've been out there and taken a look, the property to the west is another self-storage site. It's fully fenced all the way around. There's really no good opportunity to link in with that site. So, from a connectivity standpoint, I don't think there's any really good cross access, potential here for connecting these parcels. But other than that, it's relatively straightforward. The uses are relatively consistent with what we see along this section of Central Avenue. So, again, we'll want to just pay attention really to the stormwater issues, I think, as the project evolves. So.
Okay, we'll take comments from the board. Paul Rosano, do you have comments or questions? Is Paul muted?
I'm all set. Luigi, how do you plan on lighting this project? Because I imagine self-storage, people are going to be going there at all different hours. Would these
Yes.
lights be on the side of the buildings, or are you looking at poles, or how do you normally go about doing that?
No, so the site lays itself for building mounted lights. We may get into just, a pole mounted near the entrance, right? I always like to light up the entrance for safety, but for the most part, we can do all of this with building mounted lights.
Now, would they have to be on basically all night long, or would they have kind of a sensor built in?
We could set them up with sensors and timers.
Okay. The only other question I have, and it's going to be a Steve Hyder one, but I'm going to let it go with the exit only curb cut, but I'll leave that for him.
Gotcha. Lou?
The only comment I have is that the westerly curb cut, that exits right out into the beginning of the bus stop. And safety-wise, I think that could be an issue. And since you're going to be closing off one curb cut, I can't see any reason why you couldn't close that one off and then just have your entrance and exit on the easterly curb cut. Other than that, I think it's okay. And that would also give you, how many feet are you short for frontage? Frontage?
I don't know. I did it in percentages, so
That could help you with
that could get it closer. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Chip?
Yeah. Is this going to be fenced in?
The rear will be, the self-storage part of it will be fenced in. Yes.
You're going to have certain hours of operation, or is it going to be around the clock?
I don't think it's going to be around the clock. For the most part, anybody using self-storage are going in during daylight hours. We certainly want to allow them to go in because, this time of year, 4 or 5 o'clock, it gets dark. So we'll have some lighting, but I would say it'd be restricted to, but again, I don't know. We can have that answer, or if Matt, you want to answer that now. It's up to you, but I don't see a 24-hour operation for the self-storage.
I think it's going to be limited hours. I don't see it being a 24-hour self-storage. It's not going to be geared to that. And I don't think it's that size of a complex where you need it 24 hours.
Okay.
I think it's going to be limited.
That it, Chip?
No, I'm also in favor of closing off the westerly curb cut not only for safety reasons, but I just don't think it's necessary with the kind of traffic going in and out of there.
Okay, thank you. Chief Hyder?
Yeah, I mean, the westerly curb cut's very convenient for them, but I don't know if it's necessary. And even if it was, I'd want to see designed differently so that it prohibited left turns in some way or fashion. The other thing is, I mean, the devil's in the details after sketch, but I'd love to see a drawing of what the building's going to look like. We don't want a warehouse-looking building fronting Central Avenue at this point in our lives, I don't think. And that's about it for me.
Greg?
I too am in agreement that the westerly curb cut really doesn't need to be there, especially since all your trucks are going to be kind of behind and it's just a straight shot out to the easterly one anyway. We're in favor of moving buildings back. How far back is this building from, I mean, you may have mentioned it and I missed it.
It's 59 feet from the right of way. So,
okay. All right, great. The other comment is, I think this is a great project because there's a ton of this property that is in the floodplain. So I think that this is a really nice use for property that is challenging. Speaking of that, for the self-storage, because it's going to be in the floodplain, I don't know whether we want to get involved or not, whether they should be posting a little sign telling people that, there's a possibility that this area could flood. Because I think most self-storage places, if you get insurance from them, it doesn't cover flood, but I could be mistaken about that. I'm just thinking about for consumers. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty good project, and I agree with all the other comments from everybody else.
Right.
Okay, I agree with all the comments I've heard so far. I agree with the elimination of one of the curb cuts. Can somebody, I just have one question. How does the whole floodplain thing work, and on what basis is a waiver granted on that? I don't know if Chuck or somebody in the department understands that.
Peter, that'll fall to me. I have to take a look a little bit more into that because the floodplain management is not something that we see terribly often. But we'll we'll have to take a look and see what that area is classified on the firm maps and what it's going to be rated as. There are times that some of these do fall on the firm maps and there's not necessarily a high risk of flooding, and so we don't generally have a concern. But if it's something more than that, then we'll have to talk about what some possible solutions are there to addressing that.
Okay, thank you. That's good enough for now. If you learn more, please let me know at some point.
Will do.
Okay, any finished up comments by anybody?
Just one more. The proposed grease traps, is that for possible tenant?
yes, yeah, either possible tenant or like, we're not sure which side trenchless today is going to take. But, we're anticipating, some sort of a drain inside the building for washing the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you to the applicant. We look forward to seeing you for your concept application.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, next and final item on the agenda, 609 Bout Road, Kim Mixed Use, Concept Acceptance Review of a mixed-use development comprised of two separate structures, a single-story, 3,400 square foot commercial structure, and a two-story, 4-unit, 4,747 square foot residential structure. The site is zoned NCOR, which is neighborhood commercial office residential. And we'll turn it over to Sean and the department if they have any preliminary comments.
Zach, same thing. You want to introduce this one?
Yep, I can do that. So the last time you guys saw this project, it was back in August for sketch plan review. From what you saw back in August to today, there's not much that has changed as the actual design. The one big waiver still is the maximum setback from Bout Road. They exceed the 20 feet, so that's that's the waiver that's going to be required. Some of the comments that from the planning board, the applicant has taken into consideration is they've added the swing set and the picnic area for the apartments in the back. They've moved the handicap parking towards that area and included a crosswalk. So you have the capability of using the sidewalk connection down from the handicap spot to the commercial building. I think the biggest concern that the planning board had last time was just the overall size of the project with 2 buildings on the site and just the overall layout. So other than that, I'll let Brian go ahead and start his presentation on any other changes if he has.
Thank you, Zach. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Again, Brian Sipperly from Verity Engineering. We are here tonight representing Sang Kim for the mixed-use development at 609 Bout Road. Before I give a quick overview of what the project is for the board as courtesy, just because it's been a little bit of time, Zach, you did point out a couple of key important things that I want the board to note in that, I guess, in general, the applicant wanted to pursue and advance the sketch plan that the board saw last. If I was just to familiarize the board with some of your comments, Zach mentioned the overall size. It appeared crowding was one of the comments. We had some comments about amenities, access to Bout Road, kids safety. We talked about handicap access. We talked about dumpster location, and things like that as well. So what I wanted to know is that the applicant definitely wants to advance what is shown in front of you all this evening. And so what we did is went back to the drawing board and tried to make those slight tweaks based upon some comments from the board during our sketch review. And Zach, you noted a couple of them. So we've got an amenity area, picnic bench. We've got a barbecue grill. We've relocated the dumpster enclosure just off the edge of the commercial building that is proposed to be a masonry enclosed structure. We've relocated the handicap parking, added the crosswalk. Somebody mentioned the last time that they didn't see pedestrian amenities out to Bout Road, but I just wanted to note that those were there the whole time. So we always have had a sidewalk. Thank you, Zach, for zooming out, connecting the Bout Road area as we show a sidewalk as well in the right of way, but that is there as well. One of the comments was just about the size of the commercial building and some crowding going on the west side of that commercial building, which would be the west side yard setback. We have reduced the building about 10% on that front access, and we've gone from a 6-foot side yard setback right there to an 11-foot. So we've tried to do our best to increase that and gain some elbow room. And again, so those are just some of the general comments. Chuck, I know you had a comment pertaining to the potential uses and the traffic impacts, and we can kind of talk about that in a little bit. So again, this site, 609 Bout Road, mixed use proposal, 2 separate principal structures. So we have the residential component of the mixed use being 4,747 square feet, placed to the north of a single-story commercial structure that is proposed to be 3,400 square feet. The site does contain wetlands. These wetlands were delineated in November. Field confirmed by Army Corps, and the line did not change. So the limits the limit of disturbance of those wetlands is under 1/10 of an acre and has not changed from the previous proposal. So the applicant will seek coverage to fill those wetlands under a nationwide permit. Other than wetlands, we don't have any standing water bodies on the site, no water courses, and we are not located in the 100-year floodplain. The site is served with a single curb cut onto Bout Road that will remain unchanged as well, and a new municipal water line connection to support potable and fire demand is proposed, along with a new sewer connection. All utilities required are at the right of way. We do have a closed drainage system on the site. Chuck, you asked, there's somebody from the town inquired about what is it and who installed it and does it work? It appears to be draining some low areas in the back of the site. I don't have any information on when it's installed and who did it, but I will try to track that down and give an update on our next submission. Other than the small changes that we had proposed here, again, the site just involves clearing, grubbing, grading, preparation for the stormwater management area, preparation of construction for the building pads, and landscaping and lighting, parking amenities. We would be seeking a site plan approval and permit coverage under Army Corps of Engineers. From a waiver perspective, we did notify the board last time that due to the irregular geometry of the parcel, it is difficult to hold the maximum front yard setback. So what we are requesting there is a relief to that front yard setback. And I think the applicant is aware where we are deviating from the desire to do stacked uses within this zone. It's about all I have for an update. I'll turn it over to the board for any questions at this point.
Okay, as with the other project, this is being reviewed by our town designated engineer, Barton and LaJudas. Chuck, could you give us your comments on this project?
Sure, Peter. The board should have in their packets our concept review letter from November 24th of last year. In it, what we did is our typical concept review for the project. We went through and basically kind of looked at the site layout. We looked at the utilities, the general engineering of the site. Right now, it appears, as Brian mentioned, we just had a couple questions and concerns, but just for a matter of reference, this is an unlisted action as per seeker, so the applicant will need to submit a short form. They actually submitted a long form, which is helpful. So we'll certainly utilize that. And then certainly the board will have to make a secret determination down the road on the project before any final conclusions. However, just a couple, additional comments. They're within the Bout area GEIS. So potential mitigation costs associated with sewer or water, I should say, and traffic may apply to this, and Sean can touch on that if he wants in a bit, but that's something that will potentially need to be looked at with any kind of commercial or mixed use development here. We're also looking at a site that is an existing single family home on the site. There was really no other structures that we could tell. On the rear of the site, it looked like vacant land. So the redevelopment of the 4 residential units in the back would pretty much occur on vacant land. The parking area seems to be laid out, fairly well given the geometry of the site. As Brian was saying, it is kind of an odd shaped site. Makes it a little difficult to kind of conventionally lay the site out for a mix of uses. Again, as we said, kind of at the concept review level, or the sketch level, I should say, it just does seem like a lot of activity on a small site. It was nice to see Brian add those pedestrian amenities and those residential amenities in the back. Parking appears to be adequate as it's laid out. Again, with this site, given the wetlands on the site, we're going to be really interested in stormwater management and how that's handled. As the board knows from several other projects in relatively close proximity to this one, there are quite a bit of stormwater issues in this part of Bout Road. And, we've seen quite a few of those over the last couple of years, excuse me, with other projects. So we're going to be very sensitive to that. Let's see, sewer. The site, as Brian said, is served by sewer. We'll just want to make sure that, gravity feed is possible. That is preferable from Pure Waters, but we can certainly work with Brian on that. I know there's some initial comments about trying to lay out a sewer line, especially to those back parcels or those back residential structures. Again, I think it looks like Brian has tried to improve the access around both the residential structure and the commercial structure. I know the fire chief early on had some concerns, especially about getting equipment around all 4 sides of the commercial building, and also being able to get apparatus into the site and out of the site. So we'll want to continue to kind of have that discussion, I think, because again, the site's relatively tight on the interior. Really, the only other thing that we had just talking about the site was just trying to make sure that the access makes sense out onto Bout Road. And then trying to get a handle on, the type of commercial use that was going in there. I know at the time, when we met for sketch, that hadn't been determined, but, maybe Brian can talk about that as he goes forward. So that's really about it from the concept review, Peter. Again, we're going to want to take a hard look, certainly at the engineering. The site is relatively flat, so from that standpoint, it's not going to be probably too difficult, but how we're going to manage stormwater, especially off the north side of that site, is really going to be our concern. So.
Okay, thank you. Good comments. We'll hear from the board members now. Chief Hyder, do you have any comments or questions?
A couple comments. In a typical 1 acre site, if it was in a purely residential zone, 18,000 square foot, you wouldn't even be able to fit 3 houses on it. And here we're fitting 20 parking spots, a lot of blacktop, 3,400 square feet building and another 4,700 square feet. I think it's way overdone. I said that at sketch. I mean, if you went down to 3 residential units in a 2,400 square foot building, maybe that would work. I don't believe in putting a commercial building 10 foot off a property line, no more than I believe in putting one 6 feet off. I just think it's way overdone for a 1 acre site that borders, even though it only borders, 2 houses, it's sort of stuck in the middle of it. And I think the whole thing just needs to be downsized. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Lou?
Yes, I agree with what the chief says. I think instead of putting the stamp on the envelope, you're trying to put the envelope on the stamp. I was out there today again looking at it, and I just don't see this. It's too much on too little. Maybe something you could look at is to ask for a waiver and just make it one way or the other, commercial or residential. And based on what I saw out there, you have on the what I guess it was the east side, you got a single family resident. On the west side, you got family residents. Just beyond them, you got some townhouses. Then you got the Jones people up farther. So it might be better just to maybe ask for a waiver and just make it residential, and put in maybe a couple of townhouses in there, or even put in your apartments like you have it. But I just don't see any need for both of them. It's too small and it's too crowded. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Chip?
Yeah, same thing. I think you don't have any real frontage or exposure for the commercial building, so I don't see what the benefit is in making it having a commercial building. I think it'd be better off if you had 4, maybe even 5 townhouses on there. Maybe you could squeeze another townhouse on there. But I think, first of all, if I was going to rent property, I wouldn't want it right against, almost right up against a commercial building. And I think it'd be much more, look a lot better if it was just strictly residential. That's it.
Okay, that it?
Yep.
Craig?
Yeah, there's a number of things that I could comment about from a technical standpoint that I'm not particularly happy with, but just focusing on the big picture here, this doesn't belong there. And I don't really think I need to say anything more. I mean, I think everybody on the board is in agreement with that. And I agree with Chip. They could probably squeeze another apartment / townhouse or 2 even on here and have a much better project in the end than what is being presented to us. That's it.
Paul, thank you. Paul?
I got to go along with the board on this. I can't see a commercial component on this at all. I'd rather see him try to possibly get 1 or 2 more townhouses in. I just don't see this happening. Thank you.
Okay, I'm in agreement as well with the rest of the board. It's not our job to design your project, but I think there's too much going on here. So we have an application for concept acceptance. I don't know if the applicant wants us to take a vote or if they want to revise it and come back and can table it for now.
No, Chairman, I so appreciate all the comments of the board. No surprise that the comments today aren't any different, right, from what you echoed back in August. And it's not that we didn't listen. I think what's important that the board needs to know is this is a 100% zoning compliant plan. I think the applicant would like to seek a full residential use, but wasn't too open to going down the use variance route to do all residential in an NCOR zone. We can go the other way, but listening to the comments tonight, why would I push for a strictly full commercial use when I think what I'm hearing from the board is it's not the right location. It's a funky lot. I will point out that we are surrounded around NCOR, by the way. So the houses that people are talking about on the east and west of us are zoned accordingly. We do have a subdivision to the north. I just want to make light of it. So I think what we'd like to do at this point, Chairman, is that I generally hearing the comments, the board doesn't like what they see. We heard that in August. I think we were back to really say, you know, can we do this, right? It's a by right use and can we do it? And I think we've heard the answer tonight. So I think we request the opportunity to table this and go back to the drawing board. And what I think I'd like to do is maybe get an opportunity to meet with Sean and Zach to maybe talk through what is the best course of action from a land use planning, because I think the applicant is going to be a little bit discouraged in that they went with a zoning compliant use. I just think that the flavor I'm getting back from the board is zoning or not, maybe just isn't the right spot for the right fit on this use. So with that being said, if I could ask the board to make a motion to table.
Sure.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, that's Chip. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Lou. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. It sounds like it was unanimous to table the motion or to agree to approve the motion to table the project. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any further business before this board? If not, we shall stand adjourned and everybody stay safe and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
everybody.
night, guys.
All right, everybody.
Everybody.
Okay.